Today we come to the last of the apostles. On our stained glass window, he's called Bartholomew. And that name appears only 4 times in the New Testament. And every time, it's simply on a list of the apostles. Thus, it would be tempting to assume that we really know nothing about Bartholomew, but that would not be the case. We have a hint of something in the synoptic gospels, that is, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. In each of those gospels, when the list of the apostles is given, there is often a kind of pairing. For example, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, are naturally paired together. But brothers are not the only pairings. In the lists, Bartholomew is always paired with the apostle named Philip. Now, that by itself doesn't tell us anything, but when we go to the Gospel of John, Bartholomew is never mentioned. However, John does mention a new apostle who seems to be paired with Philip. His name is Nathanael. Now, some scholars argue that there may well have been more than 12 apostles, but that seems highly unlikely since they're often called the 12. Why call them that if there weren't 12? So the solution which best presents itself is that Bartholomew and Nathanael are the same person. In fact, some scholars remind us that in Hebrew, the prefix bar means son of. So the name Bartholomew may simply be rendered in English as the son of Tholomew or some variation. Thus, in reality, it's at least possible that this disciple was Nathanael, son of Bartholomew. And that's what I'm going to call him for the rest of this video. Well, John's gospel tells us about Nathanael Bartholomew meeting Jesus. Philip became a follower of Jesus first. Philip then found his friend, Nathanael Bartholomew, and told him, "We have found the one Moses wrote about, Jesus from Nazareth." And Nathanael Bartholomew made a rather judgmental reply. He said, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" That's pretty rude and prejudiced, isn't it? Jesus then responded in such a way as to convince Nathanael Bartholomew that he was wrong and that Jesus really is the Son of God. Now, John also tells us that this disciple was from Cana in Galilee. And I can't help but notice that in the Gospel of John, immediately after Nathanael Bartholomew became a disciple, the very next thing that happens is Jesus performed his first miracle at a wedding in Cana of Galilee. I wonder if that was to reinforce Nathanael Bartholomew's new faith. As to the death of Nathanael Bartholomew, there are several traditions. However, there's one that is the most famous and most dramatic. It's the one our stained glass window captures. Technically, it's called being flayed, but in common language, Nathanael Bartholomew was tortured and executed by being skinned alive. In fact, there's a common theme in artwork which shows Nathanael Bartholomew holding his own skin. For example, as Michelangelo famously painted him in the Sistine Chapel. Now, let's be honest for a moment. This is rather gruesome, isn't it? And when you stop and think about it, when we worship in the main sanctuary here at First Methodist, we're surrounded by images of death. In stained glass window after stained glass window, we're constantly being reminded of death. Crucifixions in different configurations, stoning, pierced, beheaded, and skinned alive. In a way, it's rather horrifying. And friends, that's the point. We traditionally understand that all of the apostles, but one, died a horrible death, and not one of them renounced his faith. If this gospel message about a risen Jesus was all a made-up lie, then would they have endured such torture unto death? Would you? Would you allow people to slice off the skin from your whole body, all the while knowing it was a lie? No, you wouldn't, and neither would any sane person. These symbols of death that surround us in worship are a testimony of and an indication of the power and reality of the resurrection of Jesus. Every one of these men was willing to be jailed, beaten, imprisoned, tortured, and executed for a Savior who died and then rose again from the dead. It's like the cross of Jesus himself. Yes, it was a device of torture and death, but the sacrifice of Jesus upon that cross transforms a horrible image into a precious symbol of love, mercy, grace, and victory. No wonder the church was not afraid to adopt the cross of Jesus as one of its primary symbols. And no wonder the church also used these apostolic symbols of death to remind us of the great and powerful faith these men had. Truly, in this very room, we're surrounded by a cloud of faithful witnesses. But they're sitting in pews too. We may not be executed for our faith, but we can join that great cloud of witnesses who gladly and proudly proclaim a risen Savior. This is Pastor Ronnie Bearden. See you next time inside the stained glass.